So I guess first of all, can everybody hear me all right? Anybody who can't hear me?
Yeah, a little bit of an echo, but that's okay. So,
Sorry about that. I'm stuck in the law library at the moment because it's easier for me to get to my next class from here.
yeah,
All right, so I guess I'll get started then. So my presentation is 70 days of artificial intelligence progress, and we are going to look at those 70 days in the context of 70 years. So, first off, where did all this start? Where did this idea come from? Well, it came from our esteemed instructor, Dr. Kim Soles, and his initial prediction at the beginning of this year of an interesting 60 days of AI stretching from January the 3rd to March the 2nd. And so I thought that given that our course this semester and those 60 days overlapped for almost the entirety of the duration of the 60 days, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at some of the stuff that has happened in those 60 days and sort of analyze it. Of course, as you can probably see from the title, we have gone, or I have gone with 70 days. And you may be asking, well, why 70? And there's two reasons for that. One, before I interviewed Dr. Soles, we decided to extend from 60 days to 70 days to include the release of GPT-4, which was on March the 14th. So exactly 10 days after March the 2nd was the release of GPT-4. And since that is one of perhaps the most major events that has happened since the beginning of the year, thought it best to include that. Um, and then how am I going to look at these 70 days of AI? How am I going to be sort of interpreting them, analyzing them? Well, there's two points that I've got here. First is my personal perspective of AI. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, I'm a first year in university still. And so that puts me at a bit of a different sort of playing field, I suppose, than maybe somebody or some of you who have progressed a bit more through post-secondary education and have maybe a more specified view of how AI fits into their field and their lives. Mine is still a bit broad, considering that a lot of what I do in university is still a bit broad, taking a lot of different courses, a lot of different topics, and with that comes a lot of different perspectives on AI. And the last thing here is my foreseeable future in post-secondary education. So, as I'm sure you may know, my intention or my goal is to get into dental school, and that's I can see at least another 5 years in university, quite possibly more. So a fair chunk of the next little bit of my life is going to be in post-secondary education. And so with these three factors here, I thought it would make an interesting sort of presentation, sort of reflecting point that I could present for this course to end off this course for me. So jumping into it, 70 days of artificial intelligence progress from January the 2nd to the 14th of 2023. And so what I've done here is I have selected three sort of advancements or occurrences during this day, or during these dates, I suppose, that I am going to discuss today. And so why these three particular ones? Well, first off, I tried to discuss everything that occurred during these particular dates. We would be here until next week, which I'm sure is something none of us want to do. But also the three that I have selected are occurrences that I consider to be paradigm shifting. And what I mean by that is they are going to change the way that we think about either a particular topic or a particular event or how we currently do things. It is going to shift the basic understanding that we have of that event or that thing. And that leads to the potential to alter the status quo, meaning it is going to change, therefore, how we proceed in doing whatever these occurrences are related to. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today regards drug design, and particularly this drug that was designed using AI is a COVID-19 drug. And two things that I found quite relevant about this particular AI occurrence. Number one, a COVID-19 drug. We are still very much reeling, I think, from the changes that have occurred in our society after COVID-19 and the world kind of shut down and is restarting. So it's still quite relevant. And also, this is a Canadian founded company, which is always nice to sort of promote something that is homegrown. So, just briefly, this company used AI to be able to detect a specific molecule that fits in to a certain protease in coronaviruses in general. So in the SARS-CoV-2 virus and other coronaviruses. And that particular molecule that was developed from that pattern that was detected by AI became the base for the drug that they are now testing as a COVID-19 drug. And as I get later in the presentation, we're going to discuss sort of what that means for the future of drug designing and what it means for the future of healthcare in general. But this is just sort of to start off, just a quick, brief overview of the occurrence. The second occurrence that I wanted to discuss, and this one I found extremely interesting, ChatGPT was, I suppose, exposed to or asked to write exams for a business administration course, as well as the United States medical licensing exam. And again, we will discuss sort of the outcomes of this later in my presentation, but sort of the overview of what happened. So ChatGPT wrote the exam for what is considered sort of a core course in MBA at the University of Pennsylvania. It's an operations management course, and it wrote the final exam or a version of the final exam for that course. And its performance would have achieved it, or it did achieve it, I suppose, a grade ranging from a B minus to a B. So average, we would say, I suppose, especially if we consider how grades at the University of Alberta, a lot of classes sort of curve or scale their courses to a B, B minus, especially in the earlier years where I still am. So we would consider that to be quite average. And then at the same time, or around the same time, GPT wrote the United States medical licensing exam. And it achieved a score of 60% on that exam. And while that may appear to be a bit lower than a B minus, it should be noted that sort of the average passing score for that exam is 60%. So again, ChatGPT on both of these exams did what we would consider to be quite average and certainly passing. And we will again discuss this more a bit later on. And the final thing, and the whole reason that we have 70 days is GPT-4 is released. And I'm sure we're all quite familiar by now with ChatGPT, which up to that point has been running on GPT 3.5. So this is sort of, I guess, the next step in GPT sort of progression. And the major thing that is changed is now GPT-4 is what is considered to be multimodal. We know that it's a large language model, but now it is multimodal. What that means is you can give it an image and it can respond to that image. The same way that we would nowadays give ChatGPT a question and it would provide us an answer with that question, we could perhaps provide it a comic strip and it would be able to analyze that comic strip and tell us, well, why is this funny or why isn't it funny? Which as I'm sure you can foresee, will have a lot of potential benefits when it comes to what we in many different fields are able to do, which we will discuss again in the next section. So, considering these three AI advancements in the future, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to focus on post-secondary education because I am going to be in post-secondary education for the next little bit. So I figured may as well see what the future holds for me. So looking at the first occurrence that we discussed, the AI designed COVID-19 drug that was developed. And so one question that immediately jumps to my mind when I read such an occurrence is if we have AI that has the ability to detect patterns that either human developers or human scientists are either missing or they're overlooking, or we just simply are not able with our abilities in biology, we are not able to detect, does that mean that AI designing drugs or assisting in the designing of drugs is going to eradicate all illnesses? And the answer to that, really, in my opinion, is in the next 70 years, probably not. And this is not because of the deficiency in AI, rather, and quite ironically, it's still because of the human restrictions. And what I mean by that is this third point. All drugs that are developed, whether they're developed by traditional means or using AI or however you go about designing it, they are still required to undergo both lab trials and human trials before they can be used. We saw that with the drug that we discussed, designed by In Silico Medicine, the Canadian company. They announced that they are starting clinical trials, which means that they have the drug and they've done perhaps some trials in the lab, they've done some research, and it shows that the drug works and it shows that the drug does what they think it does, what it's supposed to do, but they are still required to test it in the lab and, in their case, start testing it on humans to make sure that it works with the required level of effectiveness. And so, what that means is humans are still going to be the restricting factor when it comes to the rate at which these drugs can be put out, that these drugs can be widely available and used for treatment. Um, and that does not appear to be something, at least in the next 70 years, that is going to go away. If you consider sort of how long it takes now for a drug to undergo trials, I mean, usually in a normal circumstance, we're talking at least a year, normally longer, depending sort of on the urgency that, the drug is needed. And if it's an experimental drug or it's sort of a new drug that hasn't been tested in some other form before, then it takes a bit longer. And so AI can and is pushing out new and exciting drugs, but at the moment at least, they are not immediately available for use. So even if AI were to develop a drug that eradicates cancer, for example, it will still need to undergo lots of trials before it is widely available. However, AI will be um, crucial in streamlining sort of not only the design process, but also the testing process. And this is where, in the next 70 years and beyond, sort of the entire process of developing a drug to testing it, to putting it out to market, to it being effective at curing whatever it's meant to cure or treating whatever it's meant to treat, this is where that entire process through AI is going to get a lot more streamlined. It's going to get a lot more effective in that if you are undergoing clinical trials, you are able to more accurately test the drug for what it needs to be tested for, meaning you are able to target sort of the testing that you do. And again, all of this will be facilitated by AI and it will increase the, I guess, if you think about the rate of a drug's developmental lifespan, it'll make all that entire rates more effective and ultimately quicker. So when we move on to the next occurrence that we discussed, ChatGPT passes the MBA exam for the MBA course and medical licensing. One important thing to note here is that ChatGPT wrote these exams without any prior specialized training or programming. Essentially, it wrote the exam without studying, if we think about it in lay terms. And despite that, it still achieved not only a passing score or passing grade, but what could be considered an average grade, which means that if you sort of look at it, think about a curve, there would be on either side of where ChatGPT falls on the curve, there would certainly be people above it, but there would also be human students below it, which when you think about the abilities of ChatGPT is quite incredible that it can perform at the rate or at it could produce a performance that is averagely human. However, this is the critical part here. Just because ChatGPT can pass this exam, for example, the medical licensing exam, does not make it or does not give it the ability to act as a doctor, to practice medicine. And so what that means is in the next 70 years, ChatGPT AI isn't going to be replacing humans as doctors. We still need humans to be doctors. We still need humans to be largely, we need humans to be teachers. We need humans to be business people in all really educated sort of disciplines. We are still going to need humans. AI is not going to be replacing us. However, if we think about medicine, for example, because this is technology and the future of medicine, we'll focus on medicine as an example. AI will be used in a much larger capacity, even than it is now. Already, we are seeing AI being used or the use of AI being considered in a lot of different elements in healthcare. And that is just going to grow considerably within the next 70 years and even beyond. And so what ultimately that means is we are going to be able to provide healthcare, or the healthcare system is going to be able to provide care that is A, faster, B, more accurate, and C, and this is most crucial in my opinion, personalizable. And so if we look at those three things, first of all, faster, AI will be able to facilitate sort of the step from going into a clinic or going into a hospital to getting your to listing your symptoms to having the doctor interpret those systems to then being provided some sort of treatment. If we look at the middle two occurrences there, you listing your symptoms as a patient to the doctor interpreting and then acting on those symptoms, that can and will be done more efficiently and ultimately faster through the use of AI. And what that leads to is more accurate care. If we have AI assisting us in interpreting symptoms, AI is then going to be able to assist us in more accurately determining that these systems mean this, these symptoms, sorry, mean this, and this is therefore the course of action that needs to be taken. And then personalizable, and we've seen this already. One example that I provided in my paper that I want to discuss is through the Louisiana State University regarding cancer care. And what they researchers there have done is they have been able to provide sort of a database, I think is the best way to describe it, where based on symptoms, they are able to match an individual to the form of cancer that they are most likely to be afflicted with. And from there, they are then able to more rapidly and more accurately determine the course of treatment. And so being able to take your symptoms as an individual patient, as opposed to a catch-all sort of list of symptoms and being able to translate that to these are this patient's symptoms. This is what this patient, this individual patient is suffering with or is afflicted with. This is what that individual patient then needs to be treated with, or this is how we need to proceed with that patient. Being able to have that personalizable to your symptoms and to your situation form of healthcare is something that ultimately AI is going to greatly help us provide moving forward in the future. And so when we think about sort of post-secondary education or training people to work in these fields where AI is going to be increasingly prevalent, that all needs to be considered now when we are training the next generation of doctors, of dentists, of teachers, whatever field it is. It needs to be considered now in the present so that we are prepared for it as the next generation as we move into the workforce. And that leads into the final point that I wanted to discuss today, the third occurrence in the 70 days that we earmarked, and that is GPT-4 and the release of GPT-4. And so, as I mentioned, the image analyzing capabilities that has potential across multiple disciplines. If we think about, again, using the example of medicine, if you as a physician or a specialist or whatever sort of post in medicine you have, if you are able to take, for example, an X-ray, and you are able to use AI to interpret that X-ray, that greatly increases your effectiveness as sort of a individual providing treatment, because not only do you have sort of a database assisting you in analyzing this particular input, it can also be done quite a bit faster than if you interpret it, then you need another doctor to interpret it. If you need to consult with people in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, or even different parts of a hospital for that matter, it is all very time consuming. But AI, again, is able to, as we discussed previously, result in faster care and more personalizable care. And so when we consider AI now in post-secondary education, it is something that needs to be addressed by post-secondary institutions. Speaking personally, I think the response to ChatGPT and sort of the boom that has been ChatGPT, if we're talking at the University of Alberta, it's been very mixed and very I think the best word would be inconsequential. There hasn't been a firm stance taken to determine that this is where AI falls in the education process. And so what that means is we have certain faculties or certain instructors, more usually it's based on the instructor, certain instructors who will say, yeah, go ahead, use it. Do I don't care. And then you have, for example, what happened recently in business, where the faculty, I think it was the entire faculty of business, sort of said, we are now going to be investigating a few hundred, if not more, individuals because we suspected that they used ChatGPT on their assignments. I don't know the particular assignment or what it was, but that was something that occurred quite recently, actually. And so we can see sort of this discrepancy between even different classes, different faculties on how AI is being approached and how the use of AI is being approached in post-secondary education. And this is something that really needs to be addressed moving forward. And so simply prohibiting the use of chat GPT or AI in general, um, for lack of a better word, I think it's foolish because, as we discussed, it's going to be in the workforce moving forward. It's going to be in society moving forward. And if we want to produce the best generation of workers, the best generation of doctors, of dentists, of teachers, of engineers, whatever it is, we need to prepare them for what the workforce is going to be. And if AI is going to be in the workforce, we need to bring AI into the education system. At the same time, we need to maintain the integrity of the education system so that people aren't just, to use the sort of accepted slang now, we're not just chat GPTing it. We're not chat GPTing our way through courses, especially when we get into more consequential courses in, for example, medical school or in engineering, that ultimately could impact your performance and impact other people's lives down the line. Um, and so, where ultimately I believe this is leading, or I believe this should lead, is a switch from what I consider to be a more memory-based form of education in post-secondary education to a more practical form of post-secondary education that really focuses on skills. And so, again, using our medicine, our doctor example, if we consider that if a doctor is able to use AI to interpret the symptoms of a patient and then use AI to determine what course of treatment should be taken with that particular patient, the main concern of the doctor then is not diagnosing so much as it is being able to provide competent treatment. And that all comes down to practical knowledge, practically being able to, if you are a surgeon, for example, perform a surgeon. If your role is delivering babies, well, you need to be practiced in delivering babies, as opposed to being able to diagnose whatever it is you see and then act on it. You will have AI to assist you in doing the diagnosis and doing the selection or the determination of treatment. You can then focus as the doctor on providing that treatment. And in doing so, we need to, or to facilitate that sort of switch in the workforce, we need to have a change in mindset in post-secondary education to focus on a more practical form of education. And one of the things I suppose that people, or that will result from that, is a more streamlined um, education system where if a person wants to be a doctor or be a dentist or whatever it is, focusing on the practical side of it and leaving the more memory-based side while still present in that individual, having AI assist them with it means that the duration, the pathway to becoming a doctor or a dentist or whatever discipline you choose to go into becomes much more streamlined. It becomes a lot faster. Again, just as AI makes practicing medicine faster, it can also make becoming a doctor a more rapid process. And so these are these were just three of the major occurrences that happened in the 70 days that we earmarked at the beginning of this presentation. Of course, there are many, many other ones, but these personally were sort of the three that I found to be the most consequential. I think they will have a great effect on both post-secondary education and just society in general moving forward. And I by no means did any justice to their impacts in this brief presentation, but I hope it just provided you with something to think about as we move forward.
So any questions? Yeah, Pram, Scott.
Yeah, I actually do have a question. First of all, I'm so sorry for making you the sole presenter today, but you did so well that I think you are deserving of that lone time slot. So my question for you is, in what ways do you intend to incorporate like the general knowledge that you gained from this course and your research on this project into your dentistry career? And can you walk us through your vision for what you think a dental practice would look like in 70 years from now?
So, to address the first part of your question, um, dentistry as sort of I think the best word for it is an industry, because really it is an industry. It has, I think, in my opinion at least, been on the forefront of sort of the AI uptick as of late. I've had some experience working in a dental clinic, and so I've firsthand been able to see how they use technology to do things that in previous years was done completely manually. So one example for that would be if we are doing an implant. In previous years or in years gone past, it would be the prerogative of the dentist to determine where you're putting that implant so that it catches the bone, what angle we're putting that implant in so that if you put a crown on top of that implant, it lines up with the teeth. How to do it so that we miss major veins in the jaw area. Um, and nowadays, you can literally do that in minutes on a computer, and it will tell you that this is the angle that you need to go in. This is the depth that you need to go in. This is the size of implant, the length of implant that you need to use. This is the width of implant. This is whether or not you need bone grafting or not. So that's just one example of how dentistry already has progressed. And I think it just is continually going to get more and more technology based, which is where this course, for me at least, becomes quite useful because I have, I guess, a head start on some of the new and future potential technologies that could maybe, when I am practicing as medicine, be widely used. For your second question, in 70 years, honestly, in 70 years, I don't know if we will have dentists the way that we do now. If you look at getting braces, for example, that used to be something that you had to go to the dentist for. You had to get a dentist to, take x-rays and determine that this is how long you need braces for, and this is how tight they're going to be, and you have to change your brackets and the whole sort of rigmarole around it. Nowadays, you can do it online. You can order braces online, and they'll send you the mold, and you take a mold of your teeth, and they send you every however often it is the retainers that you push into your teeth, and you don't even need to go to a dentist, and it's cheaper and it's easier a lot of the time. And so I think ultimately, maybe not in 70 years, but ultimately that's where we will be headed, where unless it is something that is extremely, extremely major, perhaps a major reconstructive surgery or, a major um, emergency situation where you need teeth pulled or you have a major filling that's needed. A lot of dentistry is going to be do it yourself. And maybe that sounds a bit odd at the moment, but I think we will be at the point where people will be able to do their own freezing and do their own filling, and it'll be a quick process. And so, therefore, dentists, as we know them today, will ultimately be a lost profession. Hopefully, it doesn't happen before I make money off being a dentist, but eventually, that's, I think, where we'll be.
Yes, Pram.
Oh yeah, sorry. It was just a thumbs up. That was a really good response. That was super well spoken. It looks like you've done a lot of research into this, so thank you.
Thanks.
Scott, you had a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, that was a great presentation. Definitely a very interesting topic. Especially like recently, right? So much going on. So yeah, my question is, I guess something that like didn't fit in the 70 days or like barely fit in the 70 days is kind of this open letter recently about pausing AI training on a lot of the models that are very good. And so kind of, I guess, kind of to the theme of your presentation, what do you think kind of the implications are of not only this open letter, but kind of the tone that it will set for the industry as a whole, for government legislation, and just the future going on forward with AI? Like, will this kind of really slow things down and kind of throw a wrench in the timeline that you kind of set, or maybe this is just kind of a fad? Like, yeah, just kind of want your opinion about that.
Yeah, so I think as Dr. Soles mentioned when him and I had our conversation a couple weeks back, we're sort of in the Wild West right now when it comes to how and where we are able to use AI, when it's acceptable to use AI, whether we can, take AI and use it and then claim the resulting work as our own. And so I think taking sort of a pause on AI to sort of establish some ground rules. You mentioned legislation. I think, taking a pause on AI, establishing some ground rules, I don't think it's going to hinder AI progress. What I think it's going to do is more sort of broadly and more, I guess, more widely established where AI fits into our everyday lives. And so if we, like one of the things I mentioned is university, post-secondary institutions needing to take a firm stance one way or the other on AI. And I mentioned which way I think that stance should be, but they need to do, that is something that needs to be done because right now we're all in a state of limbo as to what is acceptable and what isn't. And so I think this sort of pause, as it were, I don't think it's going to hinder AI advancements. I don't think it's going to stop people from developing new and exciting technologies. I don't think it's something that is, even if it happens properly, is going to last very long. I think it should be taken as an opportunity to sort of establish where AI fits in our everyday lives and how that impacts different professions, different disciplines, different institutions moving forward. Do I think it's going to, take 10, 20 years off of, where we could be in 70 years or 100 years? No, I don't think it will.
So maybe you could unshare so we can
Right, yeah.
have interaction with bigger Zoom boxes. There we go.
This is the first time I've ever had to share anything on Zoom, so
Okay, cool.
I was
Yeah.
glad it worked without too many.
What I wanted to reflect on was the 70 years. So my original idea there, I don't know whether nostalgia or whatever you want to call it, looking back, venerating history and so on, means much to young people. It may not, but I thought take the AI developments in these 70 days and then put them in perspective with my past 70 years. That was what I was thinking. And why 70? Well,
Yeah,
I probably didn't have much ability to sort of think about the big picture of life before about age 7. So that would be like 70 years ago.
and so truthfully, that's where initially I went with this. That's sort of where I initially started, how I initially started writing my paper and how this presentation would have turned out. And then for whatever odd reason, I I read the course syllabus, I think for the first time ever. And when it came across to the section on this presentation, there was something on there about, you know, exponential growth and sort of all the topics that
Yeah.
this presentation and paper should cover. And I got to thinking, like, this is going the other direction. And I still think it would have been an interesting sort of presentation and interesting paper, definitely an interesting reflection. That being said, it kind of ignored the future in technology and the future of medicine. So I kind of decided to pivot there a little bit, and I kept the 70 years. I think that's honestly quite a good time frame. But I did want to look a bit in the future, yeah.
Yeah, let's think about 70 years going forward. So like the prediction is the technological singularity will be 12 to 22 years from now, right? 2035 to 2045. And probably the future is kind of unknowable beyond that point. So your statements that many of these things won't occur within 70 years, people who really believe in singularity probably wouldn't agree with you. Yeah.
And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, sort of my personal view on AI based on this course, whether I think it's not that I don't believe the singularity can occur in by 2045 or whatever it may be, how sort of widespread its effect is. I don't know, maybe this is just how I'm imagining it comes about, but I feel it will be almost sort of an exclusive thing that, only the best or the most wealthy are able to experience the singularity. At least at the beginning of its inception. So looking at 70 years, I'm not sure if it's again, just my personal opinion, how widespread of a thing it'll be. I don't know if that makes too much sense.
And then AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is sort of related in some way. It's also felt that humans will lose control after that, right? I mean, when the AI is much smarter than we are, we're not going to be able to successfully compete. So in that sense, also, if you think about the predictions of AGI, they've been like as low as 2029, in 2030s and so on. So yeah, you might be surprised, and I think you're young enough that you could go back to the recording of this video and say, "Oh, well, look at what really happened," and what really happened is either the same or different from what I was saying at that time. Yeah. So you'll probably find out, right? You'll know. You'll be able to compare the real future with your predicted future today. Yeah.
I know, like, there's some ways, I suppose, of foreseeing how all this occurs. And I guess when we think about Moore's law, it makes sense. It's sort of an explosion, and boom, we're in the future, and we've got singularity, and machines are so much smarter than us. And I don't perceive that as the reality of how it's going to happen. I feel like slowly but surely we're going to reach that future. And so, in continual steps, technology is going to be assisting us in our lives and making our lives better until ultimately one day they are able to do everything that we can do, and therefore we don't have to do what we used to do.
Right.
But just sort of my, personal opinion on it is I'm not sure if it's going to be that major instant explosion and boom, machines are running the world. I don't know if I agree with that sort of, such an exponential, immediate occurrence of technological advancement.
So I wanted to make sure that you guys are all aware of Rich Sutton's idea of the bitter lesson. And what this means is we as humans would always like to think that the way humans do things has a certain charm, right? And that when AI learn how to do what we do, that they should always model on how humans do it. And what the bitter lesson is that there's not a single instance where it really turns out that way. When AI learns skills, learns how to do something, it's almost never necessary to teach it how humans do it. It's just pure computation. It usually finds a better, faster way. And yeah, so, and now there's an article about the bitterer lesson, that in chat GPT era, you can think that this will be even more obvious, that a lot of what machines are learning about how the world works and the answer to questions and so on is definitely not based on humans teaching them or showing them how we learn it. You know, they don't have to learn it the way we learn it. So because Rich Sutton teaches in this course, and this is a very well-known and kind of simple but elegant idea of his, I wanted you to be aware of it. So it's just one more thing that makes us a bit humble as humans, that we can't assume that we naturally are better at stuff. It might be almost everything that we do, AI can improve on, and can improve on without knowing how humans do it, just knowing what it is that needs to be done. Yeah. So, surprising but true. Okay. I wanted to encourage you all to help in promotion of two things. First of all, promoting the course to your friends for fall 2023 and winter 2024. We already have 2 students signed up for the fall, so that'll be fine. But I think it always works well if there's some, word of mouth proselytizing to interest students. The other thing I'd like you to push for is for more people to come to Thursday's class, where we're planning the time capsule. I think the more different vantage points, the more points of view we have, the better that will be. So I'm not trying to force anybody to come who finds time capsules completely boring or anything, but people who you think would be naturally part of that conversation. They don't have to be currently in the course. We would welcome them on Thursday. Yeah. So yeah, the other thing you may wonder is whether every lecture in the course gets posted on YouTube. And so, yeah, there is a possibility this year, depending upon how the various lectures go, that they won't all be posted. But I wanted you to know that's even true of the lecturers, the faculty teaching. There have been occasional lectures in the course that I really wasn't very happy with. So even some faculty lectures don't get posted and are not on YouTube. So I thought you might find that amusing. you probably know of the concept of peak oil, where oil is the only important thing and we're running out. And so the world's going to end by us all fighting over the remaining oil. And there was a presentation like that. But I'm not putting this anywhere. This video file is just kind of sit there and not be shared. So yeah, anyway. Okay, any other questions or discussion? So probably I'll be sharing with you Pram's presentation tomorrow, and then we'll see each other face to face on Thursday. Yeah, and last day to complete the activities for the class participation grade is on Tuesday the 11th, and I will submit the grades at least by the end of that day. Yeah. So, yeah, any other discussion, questions, anything else? All right, well, thank you very much, and we'll see you on Thursday. Okay. Bye now.